I think all the best portrait photographers have one particular quality in common, and that is a genuine fascination with human beings. And in this video, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine who I think more than most photographers really epitomizes this quality. He's produced portraits as part of a number of series that he's done over the years, and we're only going to really be able to touch on a couple of those series in this interview. But all of those series do one very powerful thing, and that's to properly commemorate the person who's sitting in front of his lens. I'll put links to his work down in the description below this video, and I really would encourage you, after you've listened to this interview, make sure to go along and visit some of those links and do a proper deep dive on his work. And that's the other thing great portrait photographers do, is they celebrate their subjects, they elevate them, and they show them off. But Agenda doesn't just put his subjects on a pedestal. For me, his work treads a fine line where it does shout about the exceptional qualities of the person he has sitting in front of his camera, but it also reminds us as viewers of our own exceptional qualities and the things we have in common with the person we're seeing in his image. And in that way, I think his work has a real democratic equality to it. I, for one, have learned a lot about the why and how the best portraits are made just by listening to him talk about his process, and I know you will too. So I'm going to shut up now and let you hear from my friend, Agenda Brown.
I came from being a designer. I was a designer for a very long time. Got quite bored of what I was doing. I didn't feel challenged anymore, so I just went out one day, bought a camera, not really knowing what to do with it as such, and then taught myself over time to shoot images. I was obviously thinking I needed to be a technical genius at all this stuff, but I soon realized that as much as that, one of the most important things is the impact, what that person feels, what the audience feels when they look at these images. The power in a portrait is, like I said, it's not just what the image looks like, it's what the person has to give you and what you exchange during the time that you're shooting. But also, can the audience see the result of that tension? And I don't mean negative tension, but can they see the result of that interaction between the two of you, or however many people there are on the day? When the image is done, when the shoot's finished and all the gear's packed up, can you still feel some of that vibration, is a word I'm going to use, from the session? So to me, that's one of the powerful things about portraits, is that long-lasting energy that stays with the image after the shoot has been done and everyone's packed away. So to me, the way that a portrait works isn't, can you take a picture at the right time or press the shutter? It's, can you record the interaction between the two of you? How do you get on with that person? The camera becomes a sort of secondary thing and just steps in when it's needed to. But really, to me, portraiture is building a relationship in a very short space of time, and the camera will document that relationship. And that's what I want people to see, is the relationship between the two of us on that day or over those days. In my mind, there's a responsibility when you take someone's portrait, not only to make them look a certain way, but to record that moment authentically, if that makes sense. It's not always a glamorous looking image that says the most about what happened on that day or what the person's trying to convey. Often people want to look their best, which is a given, but there's something past that which is very difficult to put into words, but you need to respect the moment, and the camera obviously helps you to record that and prove that that moment actually happened. When I'm photographing people, I feel an energy sort of run through the person, along the ground, up through me, out through the camera, and then it reverses and goes back. And throughout the session, there's this sort of flow of energy backwards and forwards. The camera's obviously clicking, but it's in the background doing its thing. All it's really doing is observing this flow of energy, which is kind of give and take. And I think that the time during that give and take that you press the shutter is what gives you this vibe or that vibe. When I photograph somebody, one of the things I really want the person to go away with is maybe seeing themselves in a totally different way to what they had imagined. And that's not necessarily a better or a worse way, but just to see how the world sees them, which is very often the exact opposite. They couldn't be further apart from each other. I'm not trying to create sort of beauty necessarily in an image of a person, but I do want a very real and genuine familiarity with that person. And I think that whether it's uncomfortable or not, a lot of the sitters for those images will find that interesting if they are willing to go on that journey and delve a little bit deeper. I remember photographing a friend for her sort of business profile, but she didn't want to go to the staff photographer. She wanted to go to that extra mile of hiring somebody and getting her own image done. That's shot in the way she wants it to be done. She sent that image to her mum, and she told me that her mum cried when she saw it and said, "I've never seen an image that looks more like you than this." And that's a really good example of what a portrait is actually about. One thing that I really love to do is to shoot portraits in a location or an environment, or an environmental portrait as they call it. And I feel that I'm actually taking a portrait of the place and the person. It's not just a case of saying, stand here or stand there. It's, do you two get along? Does this person get along with the space? And again, going back to that responsibility element of the project or the shoot, how do I show that? How do I document and show that moment that happened when these two elements, the person and the space, got together and became the image? Shooting in that way is very sort of wide and observational and can allow for the space to be as much as a part of the image as the person. But on the other end of the scale, there is work I've created such as Hand, which is the exact opposite, where I zone in, take away all the distractions and focus on this, in this case, one element of the person, which is the hand. I feel that the hand gives as much to the viewer in terms of personality of the person as a portrait, even an environmental portrait, which is just on a very different scale. During the sort of lockdown period, I had more space in terms of time space around me to really consider why I'm taking pictures and what I'm actually trying to say. Whereas a lot of the time I'm led by the project to say a certain thing for somebody. What am I interested in? And my lifelong obsession has been with hands and how they can be used for a wide variety of things, from sort of brutal tasks to very delicate tasks. And I just had the time to really explore that. And that was a real blessing for me, I think. Before I created the Hand project, I would have thought that shooting a face or photographing a face would be much more different to shooting somebody's hand. After creating this project, I've found that it's not that different. I think there's slightly different elements to it, but generally speaking, the hand and the face are giving me just as much information about the person as each other. I think that the person who would normally shy away from having a traditional portrait of their face is a little bit more comfortable when I'm photographing their hand, and in that sense they become more open and give more, and it almost balances out, because typically most people, when you photograph their face, they kind of shy away from it. The hand is more giving, and then it just finds itself in the middle. There's a balance where it's actually giving just as much as the face in my mind, which is why I came up with this terminology, or this term of a hand trait. One of the biggest bits of advice I think I could give to a portrait photographer looking to find their way is to leave the idea of focusing on gear and buying the best of this, or whatever somebody's saying is the best they can have. Focus on building relationships with people. That is what, to me, photographing somebody is all about. It's the relationship you have with that person. Like I said before, the way that the camera documents that is almost incidental. Obviously you need that to give you the evidence of what happened, but if you can get that relationship down with somebody, you're onto a definite winner. The reason I'm a photographer is because I'm fascinated with humanity, and I feel it's a really good way to enable people to celebrate their own amazingness, their own sort of stamp on the world. The New Chieftains is a series that I created. I started it officially in 2014. It was in my mind a long time before that. I came across the idea not because I wanted it to be a project, just because I wanted to do something with all these people I kept meeting who had very particular traits, and they kind of they almost were forced upon me, it felt like, in a way. Or maybe I was noticing the traits more as they were coming. And the traits were kind of stubbornness, tenacity, they were driven. They were just doing whatever it took to get where they were trying to be. It wasn't about fame or the amount of money they made. It was just about taking this choice and going with it no matter what happened. So I started to just talk to these people. Then I started to photograph them. And then I thought, okay, I photographed them now. How do I pull it together? So I started to interview them. And the interviews kind of solidified that vibe of a tribe, which is why I call it a tenacious tribe. Then I sort of launched it, had an exhibition, people understood what it was about, and then I really went for it and started to create chapters and building a kind of community. The reason why I've chosen a portrait and not something else is not only to see what this person looks like, but to give a sense of familiarity, which is something I feel that I can bring to a portrait. You feel familiar, but you want to know more. So you're on that balance of just seeing into this person's world visually, but wanting to obviously read or take in more about them. And the project helps you to do that by showing you the interviews and giving you a sort of overview of their life. One of the things I think the New Chieftains is really good at, in my mind, is to celebrate how similar people are at the same time as being very different, which I call similarity and difference. All of the people in the New Chieftains are doing what they're doing. They're doing very different things. Some could be in finance, some could be in community work, some could be in fashion. But there's a very similar approach to what they're doing, and that's what I'm interested in. It's more about the methods that they choose to do what they're doing and the path that they're taking rather than what they do. So yes, I will feature the fact that this person makes amazing clothes, for example, but I want to know how and why. And if you put the hows and whys of all these people together, you'll definitely see that string of similarity, even though there's a difference. One of the methods for categorizing these people in the New Chieftains is by geographical location. And I haven't fully explored this yet, but to me, there's something within the places these people are and the way that they live their lives and the choices that they make that really needs to be explored. And I think the best example I've got of that so far is a chapter called Nordic Female Power. To me, there's a thing that sort of lives within a Nordic female, and I'm generalizing, that is very unique, but very obvious when you're in that region. Most of the females that you would meet have this X factor, which I call Nordic female power, but they have this thing running through them, which is powerful, but not forceful, and very confident, but not pushy. So there's no need to kind of enforce what they're thinking or feeling, but you definitely know what they're thinking or feeling, which I really like. I think that there's a lot more to be said and explored about that around the world, the different versions of that around the world. Many of the people I invite to be featured as a New Chieftain say something along the lines of, why me? Or I don't see myself in that way, or I don't identify those traits within me, which is exactly the point, because I think if they did, they may make different choices and do things in a different way. So there's something about me as of the observer spotting that within you while you're just getting on with what you're doing. That is community building, because you have a group of people who aren't, I guess, egotistically driven in a way. Their cause is more genuine and focused. And it's not to try and celebritize these people. It's just to remind them that what they're doing is amazing, or there are other people who are going through that similar struggle. And I think the audience and the participants of the New Chieftains can benefit from that. What's been amazing for the New Chieftains is to see it grow from an idea that didn't have any particular direction. It just was something that I wanted to do, to people then understanding the idea, to then hosting events and people coming and filling venues up and causing those venues problems because they can't get the people in the door. You know, I've had sort of exhibitions, I've exhibited quite a few times, I've done talks, I've gone to schools and done motivational talks about the way that New Chieftains live their lives. I've had, street billboards, 20 locations around London, which was a really amazing moment for me. I'd definitely like to do more of that, but the next sort of stages I feel could be something around books, documentaries, definitely more things where people connect physically with New Chieftains and non-New Chieftains. That's something I'm also very interested in. And because I'm a real foodie, I mean, the supper clubs is a definite must on that list. One thing I want the audience of the New Chieftains to be coming in contact with or reminded of is the fact that we all have these traits. I'm not saying that because they are featured in the New Chieftains, they are up here and everybody's down here. What I'm saying is that look how ordinary this person is, and look how much like yourself this person is. So we're really all new chieftains at the end of the day.